This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Happy New Year. I'm happy to be here.
It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's great. It's great to be here, and Happy New Year to your audience as well.
Thank you for coming this morning. There's a lot of things that are happening legally, and in some cases not happening.
Yes.
Should be happening legally. And we're going to cover a number of those things and also look at the responsibility of the LSK and in the direction in which it should be going. And there's also this big sore thumb that's sticking out. It's a 5 trillion shillings sore thumb. But then also that gives and lends to the larger conversation around, okay, come on, guys, should you be hiring private counsel to handle government matters? We'll look into that as well. But before we get into all of that, Dennis has today's proverb. Over to you, sir.
Yes, today we are in Angola.
Angola?
Yes, Angola, land full of gold, diamonds, and oil. But a country that still finds itself in a difficult place from the civil war that happened in the country, and they have live landmines as we speak today. We can only hope that things will get better for the locals, because you want to know where you're stepping, it's safe. But let's go to the proverb. Walk with the thief and you will steal. Walk with the liar and you'll lie. What are Angolans saying?
Wow, that's an amazing proverb. It says, you become the company that you keep. And to judge the quality of a person, look at the company that they keep.
Well said.
We'll look at the company that they keep. All right, that's interesting. Even as you practice the law, some of the company that you keep is the Law Society of Kenya. And I think some of us get it wrong. Maybe it's necessary for us. And maybe, every time that we do have a conversation about who's going to be at the helm, or who's going to run the thing, that there's an understanding for us about what mandate the Law Society of Kenya actually has for Kenya. And it's not just a group of lawyers who are going to hang out to Friday and say, okay, well, what did you do today? A little bit more than that. So please remind us, what is the mandate of the Law Society of Kenya?
To make it simple for your viewers, many of you whom are not lawyers, I like to say that the Law Society of Kenya has 2 main mandates. The first, you can capture it by saying that the Law Society of Kenya is the Lawyers Society of Kenya. It's a professional body for lawyers. It regulates the legal profession. It is meant to champion their interests like a trade union. So it is the Lawyers Society of Kenya. But under Section 4 of the Law Society of Kenya Act, it is also the Society of Law in Kenya. And that is where the public interest comes in. The issue of rule of law, constitutionalism, human rights, to advise the courts, the government, the people of Kenya to facilitate access to justice. So those are the 2 main roles of the Law Society of Kenya. For lawyers, this is our professional body. But for the rest of the public, this is a body that is meant to champion the rule of law, access to justice and constitutionalism, and to assist all arms and organs and levels of government in doing so, to call them out when we need to call them out because they are not doing the right thing, to collaborate with other human rights organizations when there is an imminent and grave danger to human rights, and so on.
For a very long time, LSK, especially in the political circles, has been seen as that trouble body, because laws are passed. LSK, no, you can't pass that law. We're going to court and we're going to object it. Kenyans have a problem with their law. The first LSK wako wapi? Where are we not hearing them speak? So then one just asks, one goes further to look at LSK as the body that is there to ensure constitutionalism and rule of law is actually implemented as it were. How is that critical and center to LSK's mandate?
First of all, there are already certain constitutional bodies that have been given an express mandate of securing constitutionalism. These are the Chapter 15 commissions, constitutional commissions and independent offices. There are several of them. They are part of the constitutional architecture. The Law Society of Kenya is recognized in the Constitution as the body that represents lawyers. It's not named in the Constitution, but the Constitution references the body that represents lawyers in Kenya as one of the bodies that constitutes membership of the Judicial Service Commission. So the Law Society of Kenya, most of its mandate is statutory. It is established under the Law Society of Kenya Act of 2014. And in that act, it also has the role, among others, of securing constitutionalism and rule of law. So it's a support role. It's not the principal role. It's not the principal organ, but it's meant to play a support role. But because lawyers occupy places of influence in very many other organs and arms of government, in the constitutional commissions and independent offices, in the legislature, the judiciary and the executive, then the Law Society of Kenya, you could say, has an impact that goes beyond, you could say, the natural imprint of Section 4 of the LSK Act, because it can inspire, it can call out its members, it can marshal and mobilize its members on issues of constitutionalism and rule of law. So that is why LSK is quite important, and it cannot achieve this alone. It has to act sometimes in collaboration with the government agencies, private sector agencies, individuals, civil society organizations, faith-based organizations, and so on. But definitely LSK has had an impactful role in matters of constitutionalism and rule of law through the years.
Okay. Does the nature or business or the manner in which the LSK carries out itself change with the person who sits in the leadership?
Yes, naturally it does. Like any other structure, the leader sets the tone. There is a saying that human beings, like fish, rot from the head. So if a structure or an organization is going to rot, it will start from the head. And if it is going to become strong and inspire people towards the right kind of change, again, it will ordinarily start from the head. Of course, the general membership play an important role, and the new constitution in Article 10 talks about the role of participation of the people, or public participation, as a national value and principle of governance. Even in LSK, the question of engagement is important. But the organ that governs LSK, which is called the Council of the Law Society of Kenya, and the ultimate leadership, the president of the Law Society of Kenya, does have an impact. So we've found times when the leadership of the Law Society of Kenya is a bit less outward looking, a bit more inward looking, focus on practice issues for the profession, and maybe not focus externally. Sometimes not focus even so much on the practice issues, a bit more laid back. Sometimes it's a bit more active and energetic. But we have reached a time now in the year 2026, as we approach the 2027 elections, when not only lawyers who I have visited and talked to across the country, but even the general public are very keen to ensure that LSK is active, is energetic, and is engaged in issues of constitutionalism and rule of law as we approach the 2027 general elections.
Okay, this is interesting because in the last year or so, I mean, no matter how you want to color it, the truth is that people didn't know that the LSK could be as robust as it has been, because it didn't matter what happened that touched on the judicious or litigious matters for Kenyans. The LSK was right there. It could have been in the persona of the current president, Faith Odhiambo, or it could have been something else. As you say, it would change from leadership to leadership. But it would appear as though the LSK was challenging, it was alive, it was robust, it was challenging anything that would seem to contravene the rule of law. And Kenyans said, okay, this is what perhaps is supposed to happen. Is that the persona it should take on? Regardless of who sits there, should it actually take on the persona of then coming out and saying, excuse me, this is not what the law says, this is what you should actually do? Is that the position it should take, or, you know?
The interesting thing is that even the lawyers who are members of the Law Society of Kenya and may be actually inclined to support the government of the day, when it comes to their own professional body, They would like a professional body that acts with principle and energy and rule of law and is able even to call the government to account. This is even lawyers who are working in government. So there's a general consensus that the Law Society of Kenya should be an independent bar association that is not co-opted by any forces that stop it from speaking out on behalf of Kenyans. And I must say that in the last 2 years, the Public Interest Litigation Department or Directorate in the Law Society of Kenya and the committee that does public interest litigation, led by a council member called Jose Amano, has worked very well. And of course, under the leadership of President Faith Odhiambo, to ensure that LSK is more involved in public interest matters, is more energetic in matters that relate to the public. And so there has been an improvement from what was done before. It doesn't mean LSK was not doing it before, but as you've rightly said, it's become more robust in that area of public interest litigation. And this is something that definitely we can't afford to allow to retreat to a situation of cooptation. But even with the current public interest litigation, LSK needs to ensure that its activity is always full of integrity and transparency. It avoids sometimes invitations to compromise maybe some public interest litigation cases, because the stakes can be very high. And this kind of offers do come from time to time. And that it keeps reporting to its members and also keeping the public informed about what it is doing.
So in the leadership of LSK, so here's a question where LSK has been invited to be part and parcel of a process that one would say is greater for the larger good for the country, but in what LSK is seen to be standing for does not sit well with Mwananchi. At that particular point, does LSK have room to ask members to give the way forward, or is it just a decision that is made by the leadership of LSK?
So
do members have room to chime in and determine the path that LSK would take in specific matters or invitations that you talk about?
First of all, let me say that I'm a candidate for the presidency of the Law Society of Kenya. We'll be having elections next month in February. Under our law, every president serves one term of 2 years. And we are one term by law. We don't have possibility of 2 terms. So the term of Faith Odhiambo
I know you are more intelligent than you would have us imagined by making that statement. But okay.
So Faith Odhiambo's term is coming to an end, and I'm sure you'll invite her to reflect on her legacy and what she's been able to do. But for me, I believe very strongly that for the Law Society of Kenya to be effective, they have to continuously engage members. And there are structures for engaging members. We have general meetings. LSK is one of the professional bodies with the most robust general meetings you'd imagine. Several motions from members, a lot of engagement of members. But sometimes the robust engagement might end at the general meeting. And you need to have robust engagement with various structures and institutions within the Law Society of Kenya, including our branches, our chapters, which we have. We need to engage other lawyers associations. We have to engage more in getting public participation, feedback from members, and taking into account their views. So to answer your question directly, there is room on matters which may be a bit more controversial or conflicted views of the membership to seek their opinion. But after you receive their opinion, at the end of the day, the leadership then has to decide, how are we going to tackle this issue? Because you can end up caught up in what is called paralysis by analysis and endless public participation while the house is burning. If the house is burning, put out the fire. Then now we discuss what next.
Okay. And when we look at the law, is it what the law of the land, and that law we're talking about is the Constitution, that where there should be, it's been provided for, different protections that serve for the people. And you would imagine that those who've been put in positions of representation whereby this law would be guarded would be the ones who would ensure that those protections are in place. That doesn't often happen.
Yes.
And that's why we see that it's it's caught many people by surprise that there is a body that can actually stand for the people, that augments the responsibility of the constitutionally assigned body that's supposed to do that. Should we start thinking around that could be a space that should be vested in some kind of permanency?
Actually, it's very interesting. When I was a young lawyer, the first committee of the Law Society I joined and served in was the Law Reform Committee. Those days it was called Legislation and Law Reform Committee. And the role was to look at what was happening in Parliament, especially anything that may be of interest to lawyers. And we noticed at the beginning that committee and that function was under-resourced. There was no program officer to serve matters of legislation and law reform. After a few years, I became the convener of the committee. And one of the things we did is we started campaigning. We actually, to the Council of the Law Society of Kenya, we actually wrote letters to them. We asked them, can you establish a directorate or a function of law reporting? Can you have a program officer to deal with this issue? So that was already around 2010. You can see that we already identified by that time that this was a very crucial function that the Law Society should be performing, that at the time it was not performing effectively. In the 2014 Act of the Law Society of Kenya, it is expressly stated in Section 4 as one of the functions of the Law Society of Kenya, the question of reviewing legislation and law reform. Of course, the Law Society is funded primarily by members' funds, because it's members who pay subscription fees. But LSK can also seek donor support or money from well-wishers, especially when they are running programs like public interest litigation, to adequately resource what they are doing. They can also work together with other partners, including human rights organizations, civil society organizations, even government or public sector agencies. And that is what LSK has been trying to do to a certain extent. And I believe it needs to be ramped up in the next 2 years as LSK moves to the next term of office.
So every institution has its ups and downs. LSK, as we look at it today, there's a lot that Kenyans credit for in terms of just ensuring that what happens in the country, legislations that do come up, decisions by government, everything is above board. But as well, no institution runs without its challenges. So what are some of the good LSK has done that needs to be propelled, improved upon, and move forward? And which are the gaps that needs to be filled and addressed as well?
That's a really profound and also broad question. It would take an hour to answer in full, but I'll give a summary as quickly as I can. I think in the last 2 years, LSK has done much better in matters of rule of law, engagement in supporting Kenyans, even during the Gen Z protests, calling out extrajudicial processes like abductions, extrajudicial killings, and so on. So LSK has done well there. But even there, in the area of rule of law, my feeling has been that LSK has tended to be reactive. We are reacting better, but we tend to be reactive. Somebody crosses the line, then we make noise, whether it is parliament or whoever. I believe that even in rule of law, LSK needs to get to the next step where we are both proactive and reactive. We don't just wait for people to continue crossing the line, but we also come up with structures of building a spirit of constitutionalism. I'll give you an example. Right now, the constitutional organs that are meant to promote constitutionalism are the CCIOs, we call them that, constitutional commissions and independent offices, or Chapter 15 commissions. They are generally under-resourced, underfunded. Their reports are not processed effectively. LSK needs to collaborate more with these organs to promote constitutionalism. Until now, we've never done, as the Law Society of Kenya, a rule of law report. But with an organization I'm part of called Lexaf Trust, we did the first rule of law report focused on Kenya last year. LSK needs to now take this up and do its own rule of law report annually to check what is happening on rule of law and constitutionalism. Is it a proactive approach so that when you see gaps early, you begin solving them, where you see things that are not working? For example, right now we have a crisis that is looming about a boundary delimitation in preparation for the 2027 elections. These are the kind of issues where if we adopted a proactive approach to rule of law, in addition to the reactive approach, LSK would get involved early on, blow the whistle, and ensure that things are being done, not wait until things have gone very awry and then blow the whistle. In areas of integrity and independence of the bar, integrity of the bench, of the basically the structure surrounding the legal profession, I think much more needs to be done. We have seen the return of corruption in the commercial and court registries, like lands, companies, in the judicial registries, some elements in the judiciary. There's even corruption in the legal profession itself. There's been criticism about procurement of public legal services by public providers or public organs. And not because the procurement in itself is a problem, but because there have been instances of corruption and lack of accountability. Those issues of integrity, we need to deal with them, because if we don't deal with them, they make access to justice inefficient, inaccessible, and they reduce the confidence of the public in the ability to procure effective legal services. They reduce the ability of the Law Society of Kenya to secure even professional work for all its members, which is one of the functions of the Law Society of Kenya. So you find a few people may control all the legal work, and the others who are able to offer effective legal services are not doing so. In the area of practice and welfare, this is now more inward looking of lawyers, because LSK, as I said, one of its role is as a lawyer society of Kenya. It's like the trade union for lawyers. It's meant to ensure there is professional regulation, but also lawyers are serving according to certain minimum standards. They are serving their clients well and effectively. And we are protecting our practice space. So there are certain things that lawyers go to law school for 4 years. They go to Kenya School of Law for a 5th year. They do pupillage so that they can serve the public with distinction. But you have people who are imposters or masqueraders, we call them, or quacks, that are encroaching in some of those spaces. Even people who are not trained in the law. And then you also have new areas of practice, new things emerging. Alternative dispute resolution is no longer new, but there's a lot of untapped potential. Technology, legal technology, tools, artificial intelligence, climate change. There are so many areas that are coming up. Corporate governance, governance and legal audits, etc. And LSK needs to be more deliberate also in expanding practice space. If you compare the legal profession in Kenya with more advanced countries, you'll find that the number of lawyers per capita, lawyers in the population, are much higher than in Kenya. But the legal profession has adapted to the various needs of the consumers of legal services. They have promoted and accelerated the speed of doing business. They have promoted and accelerated the speed of dispute resolution, the speed of entering into agreements, and so on. So those are some of the areas where I think LSK needs to do better. LSK cannot afford to just continue on the same trajectory it has been on. On some areas, it needs to build on it. On some areas, new and fresh ideas need to come so that LSK can really meet the desires of its members and even the general public to be a more impactful professional body that contributes to the rule of law and the legal practice environment.
Okay. I know that I'm asking a lawyer this question,
Yes.
But if it would be great, a yes or no question.
Yes.
And then I can ask part B of that question based on your answer. Do you think that that government should be able to hire private law firms to sort out their legal issues?
Yes.
Okay. 18,000 lawyers must wait until this Friday to know whether the fate of their engagements with public entities. So we know that yesterday, Judge Mohochi upheld his order of the 12th of January, barring all public entities from bringing in private law firms. Led by the president of the Law Society of Kenya, you attended a virtual session challenging the order. What is the genesis of this, and is it getting into murky waters whereby private law firms then sort out legal issues for government when the argument that's maybe in the background is that there's adequate legal representation within government to sort out legal issues?
Okay, I can say three things, but first let me clarify. What happened is that an ex parte order was issued by the judge in Nakuru, barring lawyers from offering services to public sector entities if they have internal counsel. That order was ex parte, means that no one was heard apart from the petitioners.
The petitioner, yes.
So the alternative views were not heard. Once that order was issued, a date was given for directions, further engagement in the matter. The Law Society of Kenya and several lawyers honestly were appalled at the depth and the breadth of those orders and how they were having an impact on access to justice, on ongoing contractual engagements between public and private sector. So an application was filed because we couldn't wait for the date when the matter was going to come up next according to the court timetable to try and revisit those orders. That application was heard partially yesterday. So it's not that the judge upheld his orders because the orders were already in force. The judge could not set them aside until the application was fully heard. So the application will be fully heard later this week. So now to answer your question about the genesis of this issue, and I would like to say more or less 3 points. One, the first point is just a general point of knowledge that private sector lawyers have always been offering services to the public sector.
Yes.
It's not a new thing. It's been there since independence. It's been there in other countries. It's a normal practice. And it's not a practice that is limited to the legal profession. Other professionals the same. In the government, you might have internal media consultants. It doesn't mean they'll not hire an external media consultant. They may have an internal accountant, engineer, doctor or medical service provider. It doesn't mean they'll not use the services of private sector providers. And Article 227 of the Constitution, which deals with procurement, recognizes that public sector procures private services. And so long as they follow the procurement principles of free, fair, transparent, accountable, they are allowed to do it. And this is further buttressed by the Public Procurement Act. So it is the norm. Not just in the legal sector, but in all sectors.
Okay. So
that's number one.
Okay.
Number two, even though it is the norm, there are possibilities of abuse of public procurement. In fact, not just possibilities. It happens frequently, and we all know it. We keep decrying corruption, both in private and public sector. So public sector corruption includes procurement of all manner of services, including, for those who are corrupt, legal services. And sometimes there may be some people who collude with lawyers in the process of procurement, the way they may collude with any other service providers. So what has happened is that in the course of the last few years, the Auditor General has red flagged the volume of legal fees or the magnitude of legal fees in certain public sector entities, including the county governments. In the process of that red flagging, it's important to note, because I have looked keenly at the reports, that there is a different way in which different entities report on legal fees. Some public sector organizations, when they're reporting on legal fees, they include not just the fees being earned by the lawyer, but the court decree. Because you see, when the lawyer sends a demand, he's basically enforcing a court order.
Yes.
You may be the one who hired a lawyer, he took a public sector organization to court, and a decree was issued. And then the lawyer sends a demand for payment with the decree. So some public sector organizations lump all that as a legal debt or legal fees debt that has to be paid. So also the reporting has not been consistent, and it has helped to exaggerate a problem that exists, but it has been given a magnitude that is beyond the reality. Because when a lawyer is asking for payment of a decree, that decree is not legal fees. It is a court order. It's a court judgment. However, There have been, as I said, cases where lawyers themselves charged very high legal fees, sometimes because the stakes of the matter were high and they used the remuneration order, or they entered into an agreement that was reasonable based on the value of services they are providing. But in some cases, there may have been collusion. For example, some governors or some counties may collude with the lawyer. They they agree for the lawyer to charge, let's say, 50 million shillings, and then maybe 30 million shillings goes to the people in the county, and the lawyer takes 10 or 20. So those are definite issues that need to be addressed, but they have to be addressed on a case-by-case basis. You can't address them by, you could say, burning down the building so that you can get at a rat or at an infestation of 2 or 3 rats in the house, and you burn down the building. You cannot use a sledgehammer to kill a mosquito, and then in the process you destroy the car and everything there. So what we are trying to say is that there is definitely an issue that needs to be addressed. But the solution is not to say that lawyers should not offer services to public sector, because public sector needs those legal services.
Understood. But I think one of the riders to that was that if there is no legal counsel available, which gives the notion that in some of these entities that there is legal counsel available, are you essentially saying that the legal counsel, having been hired by public entities, is incapable of handling any of this work?
Of course, the answer to that question is that the in-house counsel, the lawyers who work in-house, are very competent people. And they develop competence that is sector-specific. If you are an in-house counsel in a bank, you become very knowledgeable about your employer and the business they do, which is banking. And they also are fully employed. You will find the bank has a legal department with several in-house lawyers, very busy from morning to evening. But when they have court cases in court, you'll find that 90% of the banks, they hire external counsel. This is how private sector organizations operate. Yeah. When they have important legal transactions, they hire external counsel, not because the in-house counsel is not able to do the job, but because they work well, they collaborate well. The in-house counsel gives instructions, they know what needs to be done, and by hiring external counsel, you can maximize the work that is done, you can increase the amount of specialization, because the in-house counsel, of course, has to advise the employer about various aspects of work. So in-house and external counsel have no conflict. We work very well together. In fact, when this court order was issued in Nakuru, it was in-house counsel, like the County Attorneys Forum, who complained the loudest. And they said, why are you stopping us from procuring services of external lawyers? It makes their job easier. It makes them more effective in what they are doing. So to answer your question, even the public sector, just like the private sector, needs to have both in-house counsel or internal counsel who deal with the internal issues, because the legal work that has to be done is extremely massive, and external counsel. You will find there some public agencies like KRA and NEMA where their in-house counsel go to court, because they deal with specialized aspects of legal practice, and they have said, let us build that capacity internally on tax matters. But even in those agencies, you may find some other matters that go outside the scope of the ordinary work of the in-house counsel that they may want to hire external counsel for. And if you don't get the best lawyer for the job, whether it's internal or external, you risk a lot of loss and costs for that organization. I remember talking to some lawyers related to IEBC, because IEBC is one of the bodies that has been accused of high legal fees. And even people working in IEBC. And you know what they told me? They told me, Kanjama, you know the cost of doing a fresh presidential election is more than 10 billion shillings, maybe 20 billion shillings. So when there is an election petition, we have to ensure that we get very high quality legal service, so that at least they can defend the facts and the law on the ground, because the cost for us is 10 billion, not just for them, because when it is a cost for a public sector entity, it's ultimately cost for the taxpayer. So of course, when they hire those lawyers and they have to pay them competitive fees, they are ready to pay them a bit more. The stakes are high. They do much more than they would do in a slower case that is maybe going to take 6 months. And then the effect is actually to save the public taxpayer and the public purse. So what we are saying is that these considerations have to be taken into account, not only about the legal sector, but actually they apply to professionals across the board.
You see, Wakili, the reason why that has become even conversation in living rooms today is because you look at the amount that is charged by external services vis-a-vis an internal counsel, and one looks at the disparities and asks, where is the fairness in that? It's just a layman way of looking at things. And one would also ask the question, say, I'm in a bank, right? I'm an internal counsel in a bank. That means everything to do with procurement, documents that are come to ensure that a process is clean, goes through me to ensure that everything is clean and that I'm not opening myself to litigation. In the event that I find myself in court, have I not failed as an internal counsel? Okay, it's so a question. So then one asks the question, if I need to hire external counsel because my internal counsel is not good for the job, get rid of them and just work with external counsel.
I think that will also be a misunderstanding of the role of in-house counsel. The average member of the public thinks that the main thing lawyers do is go to court and represent you in court. Actually, as the legal profession expands, you realize that lawyers have two fundamental roles, I could call them. One is, we call it building relationships, to help people enter into agreements, determine policies, go through processes like even disciplinary processes for employment, etc. They give advisory work. They are helping to build relationships. Secondly, because human relationships break down for one reason or the other that is connected to human nature, when relationships break down, they help to rebuild the relationships by engaging in dispute resolution. So for the average member of the public who may assume that the essential job of a lawyer is to appear in court and to argue before a judge, they need to be educated and informed that actually 80% of the job of a lawyer is before you get to court. So in-house lawyers are actually very busy. They are busy serving the organizations. They are serving the different departments in that organization. The in-house lawyer also has clients. The way the external lawyer has clients, the different organizations that procure services from us, the in-house lawyer, their clients are the departments in that organization. There is HR department, there is marketing, there is sales, there is regulatory work that they need to do. They are very busy, actually. In fact, for them, sometimes they say, if you are going to order some of these jobs, when we are trying to serve you very effectively in this area, you'll actually reduce our efficiency and effectiveness. So the in-house lawyer is a champion for the external lawyer, and the external lawyer also loves in-house lawyers, because when we are serving clients, many times who gives us instructions? It is the legal department in that organization. They know how to do the terms of reference. They know how to follow up with the lawyer. They know how to engage. If we need witnesses for a court case, it's the internal lawyer who will tell us, this is a witness. They'll coordinate. So as external lawyers, we love working with clients who have in-house lawyers. Of course, we can also work with clients who don't have in-house lawyers, who are not corporates. What I'm trying to say is that there is no real tension. It's just a perceived tension. In-house and external lawyers work well together. And I'm also trying to expand the discussion and say that this is true in other professions. For example, if government, public sector agencies are involved in matters of infrastructure, they will need engineers to assist them. But if they are going to do a road like Kenha or Kura, do you think they will give the job of designing the road to their internal engineer? No. They procure external engineering services, because the internal engineer, their job is to ensure quality control of what is being done by the external providers, whether it is the engineer, the contractor, etc. This is true of all sectors. I can mention any sector, any profession, and explain to you how both internal and external professionals work together to deliver quality services for both private sector and public sector.
Okay. As we look at, this case is one of them, to then be able to understand exactly the workings of how a body like this will then operate. How then, in your opinion, should a body like the LSK separate itself between issues that would seem as though they're directly beneficial to its members and issues that are essentially for the public legal good? Why I ask, if I can just say why I asked that question, is because in this case, whereby it would seem as though, look, the livelihoods and or businesses of lawyers would be affected greatly by this if it actually lived out, a day. And people are saying, on the other hand, something that you alluded to as well, that no, but county governments, ministries are spending double, triple the amount of money that they should be spending in some cases because of something like corruption. So how do you create the balance whereby there is adequate and proper representation on public good, but at the same time where members are directly affected?
Okay, so two things. First, let me clarify. I don't want to be attributed a general statement that public sector agencies are overspending on legal services.
No. In the cases where they are.
In the cases where they are.
Yeah.
So the second thing I want to say is that the issue of public interest is important for all professional bodies. You also have journalists, Kenya Union of Journalists.
Yes.
You have Media Council of Kenya. Media Council is a statutory body, but Kenya Union of Journalists is like your own self-regulated body as journalists. It has a public interest element. The doctors have their Kenya Medical Association and so on.
Yes.
The accountants have their Institute of Certified Public Accountants. All these bodies, even though their primary role is to promote the interests of the professionals in that area, have a public interest element. But the fact that LSK takes its public interest element very seriously does not mean that you now split LSK into two, if you know what I mean, because it's what all professional bodies are meant to do. It's almost like CSR or corporate social responsibility of LSK that has been encoded in statute. As you are taking care of the interests of your members, take care of the public interest.
Right.
But then there are some areas where there could be a potential conflict, like in issues of professional regulation or discipline of lawyers. So under the Advocates Act, there is an independent entity called the Advocates Disciplinary Tribunal to deal with those issues. There is also the Advocates Complaints Commission, where members of the public who have concerns about a specific advocate or a specific service that has been given can take their complaint for investigation, and then they can take their dispute to the Advocates Disciplinary Tribunal. So those structures exist. And LSK, what it needs to do is now also sensitize its members on the need for them to offer ethical services, high quality services. We need to revamp our continuing professional development program so that it's more impactful and effective. Those are the kind of things that LSK can do. But members of the public at least know that there are structures around the legal profession that give you independent access to make complaints or to seek a public interest when you feel that the law society has been unable to do it itself.
You see, Wakili, for a very long time, I remember even a while back, President William Ruto raised concerns on the role that the fraternity, the legal fraternity, is playing in corruption cases in the country. Why do I say that? You look at the contracts being signed, and there's always a lawyer somewhere who is involved in one way or the other. And that became a conversation piece, because one would then say, if the protectors and those who are held in high esteem in protecting the law are the ones breaking the law, then where are we headed? So then that comes directly to LSK in ensuring that you have members, your members are out there to be your ambassadors, number one ambassadors. How would you rein in to ensure that such ceases to happen? Because whether you like it or not, it's happening.
Yeah, I think the first thing I would say is that there are elements in the public sector, including senior leadership of this country, who are some of the cause of being perpetrators of corruption and grand corruption, and it is quite unfortunate. And when they misuse public funds, they need to be called to account. Of course, because in this media station, I'm the only one present, I'll not name names, but I think the public knows who, or some of the people in our government, at national, at county level, in the various arms and organs of government, who are involved in corruption, and they need to be called to account. We also know that because there is a culture of corruption, even the ordinary Kenyan has got used to, you could call it, low-level corruption in the streets with the traffic police. And there have been various indices that have been done, surveys by Transparency International about corruption perception, which institutions are more corrupt. They know that, so that there is a sense in which we have to accuse those in high places who have the responsibility of leadership and are leading instead in corruption. They are leading us down. We also have to acknowledge that we ourselves, as a common mwananchi, even as we deplore the high-level corruption, we tend to become comfortable with low-level corruption when it affects us and our interests, which is also unfortunate. And in the process, we have to recognize that there are institutions and professionals that can play an additional role in calling to account those senior people who are engaging in grand corruption, in educating the public how to avoid corruption, and in also cleaning house within their own membership. And those institutions include professional bodies, all of them. And because the one that we are discussing today is the Law Society of Kenya, that includes the Law Society of Kenya. So it is true that when corruption takes place, you may find an accountant, you may find an engineer, you may find a valuer, a surveyor, and you may also find a lawyer. Professionals tend to be involved in facilitating aspects of corruption. So professionals also need to be called to account the way we call to account our leaders, the way we call to account even the ordinary citizen, because it's become like a cancer that has metastasized. It is spreading to all the cells of the body. And there's no cell or very few cells that are untouched. And for me, that is why one of my commitments in my campaign for presidency of the Law Society of Kenya is to lead and to champion the cause of integrity. Not just with words, but with actions, both against the people up there or around us who are engaging in rampant corruption, both in regards to the people around us who have become comfortable with the culture of corruption, and also to help us look inwards as a professional body, as professionals, not just LSK, but to bring together other professional bodies, for example, under APSEA, the Association of Professional Societies of East Africa, so that corruption is not something that we all deplore publicly and practice privately and secretly, which has ended up being the dynamic of conflict of interest. It's like this Greek god was called Janus that had two faces, one looking forward, one looking backward. So it's like Kenyans have become Janus-faced. When we're in public, we speak very annoyed about corruption. We say Chapter 6 is not being implemented. And then